Save the children. It was reaching the latter part of the evening, and the parents wanted to do something special. They wished to celebrate their 10th year anniversary, but the kids needed to be watched over. They didn't know who they could find at such a late hour, and all the babysitters they could call said they were unavailable. They were about to give up hope until they read an ad in the newspaper. The woman in the paper didn't charge as much as some of the other sitters that lived in their area, so they gave her a call. A few moments later, she told them she would be right over, and everything was settled. She was dressed very proper, perhaps too proper for babysitting. They told her the rules and what time the kids needed to be in bed. After the parents showed her around the house, they decided to leave. As they did, the babysitter shut and locked the door behind her, waving politely. She casually walked over to the sofa and had a seat. The chilled air seeped into the house, and the kids asked if they could turn the heat up. She said it was a perfect room temperature and opened a book, starting to read. The kids talked about how bored they were and asked if they could turn on the TV. She shook her head and said, "No, of course not. That would be interrupting my reading, but you can go upstairs and play until supper is made." She didn't say anything else. Her hair streaked down and looked darker than the burning ash of a coal fire, her eyes of green jade. Her irises seemed slanted like a cat's. She just sat down in the living room and read, and read, and read, all the way to supper. The kids made their way downstairs when she called them for dinner and noticed hardly any lights were turned on.
"Why is it so dark in here?"
the children asked. She answered back almost in a whisper, "Because we can't let him know we're here." She had quite a nice feast set out for them, and it smelled simply delicious. As they helped themselves to some of the food, one of the kids finally asked another question. "Who is him?" The babysitter looked over to the kids, a slight glimmer in her eyes, gazing down, as some of the light in the room reflected in her eyes. "My husband. He just broke out of prison. It's not too far away from here. If he finds us, he'll kill me first. Then he will come after you." The kids thought it was a cruel joke, but as the story went on, they became more convinced. One of them ran over to the phone and started to call the police, but the babysitter yanked the phone cord and it snapped from the wall. "Oh, no, he will find you, for sure, that way. He will just wait until the police leave and target the house the police went to."
"What if he finds us?"
one of the kids wondered, shaking in fear. "Then you better save your breath. You'll need it for your screams when he tears your flesh apart." The children sensed something morbid about the babysitter, but sensed her husband was even more disturbing, so they did everything she asked. The hair on the back of the children's neck stood up, chills of horror moving down and consuming them.
"He won't find us, though, will he?"
"Not if you do what I tell you to do. Truth be told, he's a vampire and can be crazed when he hasn't been fed in a while. But if you do what I say, we should all be safe," she said.
"We'll do anything,"
they shouted and pleaded. "First, you will lock all the doors. Then you will set us afire, so we can't come down the chimney. Do this first, then I will tell you your final task." They were quick to lock the door, and the parents had a gas fireplace already lit, so they turned it up until it was ablaze, and the flames rose up, till it covered the whole chimney on the inside. Then they turned and ran back to the babysitter.
"Well, what do we do now?"
"You have a cat, don't you?" She smiled as she spoke.
"Yes."
"Are vampires afraid of cats?"
She shook her head in a very slow fashion, but her face got serious. "No, they have no fear of cats. But it could be a distraction for the night. You see, vampires pick up on scents, and he will soon find me. I want you to sacrifice your cat for us. Run its blood over your rooms. His scent for us will be a distraction."
No, not our cat,
they said, picking up their cat as they ran upstairs and into their rooms, shutting the door. She soon ran after them and knocked and shook and pleaded for them to open. The cat had never shown any aggression before, but now it leapt out of the children's arms and stood in front of the door. When the kids would try to move to open the door, its fur rose up and its fangs showed as the cat hissed. The kids tried again and the cat nearly swiped at them. The children shook their heads and cried and screamed as her knocks became more violent. They could hear the babysitter's footsteps running downstairs, and their front door cracked. They could hear the glass breaking, the wood splintering as the door was becoming undone. Then it sounded like it broke apart, and the babysitter could be heard shrieking. They could hear a confrontation downstairs, but were too afraid to open the door. They could hear furniture breaking and the babysitter being tossed around. Her voice was deafening throughout the house as it sounded as if she was being stabbed. It seemed to go on and last an eternity for the children. They stopped crying and became silent when they heard someone from downstairs. They could hear them on the first step. The sound got closer. They could hear the sound inching its way to the second step, now on the third. They could hear the sound outside in the hallway. They heard it move past their mother's room. Now it was right outside their door. The noise stopped. Then it was replaced by what sounded like someone clawing under their door. It must have gone on for a short while, then stopped. Both children didn't want to move a muscle. When the parents came home that night, they found their front door busted wide open, the furniture in shambles, and there, laying in the upstairs hall, outside of their children's room, lay the babysitter. She was dead. Parents feared for their children, but were soon relieved to see them both alive. The police came shortly after and asked why they weren't contacted sooner. The children explained what the babysitter had told them and didn't want her husband to come after them next. One of the officers moved the parents away from the children for a moment so he could talk to them in private. "They're traumatized enough as it is," he said. The parents looked to the officer as if confused and in great disbelief. "I don't know how to tell you this, but according to your children's story, your babysitter was protecting them from a vampire, but she doesn't know much of their history." "What do you mean?" the father asked, looking curiously. "Well, even vampires have rules they have to follow. They wouldn't be able to break into your house. They would have to be invited in." "Are you saying she invited the vampire inside?" the mother asked. "No, that's not what I'm saying at all," responded the officer. "I'm saying there was no one in there in the first place. Your babysitter imagined the whole thing. We honestly believe she thought she had a boyfriend coming after her." The officer paused for a moment and looked at the parents sincerely. "It gets worse." "How can it get any worse than that?" the mom demanded. "Well, we believe that she thought she was in a struggle with a boyfriend, but in reality, she severed off her own legs. Then she took the identity of her boyfriend and tried crawling up the stairs. There was a knife in her hand. She was going upstairs to kill the children. Thank God your kids never opened the door."